we're on the internet.
We're live on the internet. Cool. We haven't done this in a while.
No, I had some problems with the streaming aspects, but I think I got it all cleaned up now.
And you also had problems with the COVID stuff too.
Well, I guess that's going on too.
Yeah, you get a little curveball thrown your way, but you took care of it fine. Yeah, if everybody's ready, we'll get going, and we'll introduce you, Sen, in the process of the recording session.
Yeah.
So here we go. Get everything ready. Okay. Welcome to Cardboard Conjecture. I'm your host, Norm.
And I'm Ryan.
And on this episode, we're going to do some games of late. We're going to do a little bit of news. And Ryan, this is a special episode. What do we got going on?
Yeah, we're bringing back the Designer series with friend of the show, designer extraordinaire, podcast host, fellow podcast host. I love that. We got guest Shenfeng Lim coming with us. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Cool. And then we'll bump out and we'll come back in. And we're back. This is Cardboard Conjecture. We're going to go straight into some games of late. We're going to, throw some games around and talk about it. So, Ryan, why don't you start us off? Because, you don't talk about Marvel too much. I'm serious.
Dude, like it is getting bad at this point because they release so much content for this game, and I just consume it all. Of course, it's Marvel Champions, designed by Fantasy Flight Games. And, of course, they just came out with, just released in Canada not too long ago, the latest big box expansion called the Mad Titan Shadow for the game. So it's a brand new campaign. Of course, it's the Mad Titan. There's Thanos. Spoiler alert, Thanos is not the big bad of the campaign box.
That was my first question.
There you go. If you look on the back of the box, you'll figure it out who the big bad is. But yeah, so no, it's a really good expansion. It's introducing two new heroes, Adam Warlock and Monica Rambeau, also known as Spectrum.
Yeah.
And I was really excited because I love the mystic style things that they used to do in this game. Like Scarlet Witch was a really good character to play. Of course, Doctor Strange is my jam. I love that character and love deck building around him. So Adam Warlock came, and I thought I was going to really like him, but I actually like playing Spectrum better because she's got some really neat things going on. She's got like these different energy forms that she can turn into.
What's her gig in the lore? Like, she's able to like phase shift or something like that?
She can control and turn into all spectrums of light.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a light thing. Okay.
Yeah, because
she's old Captain Marvel, or in between Captain Marvel, or she's formerly known as a bunch of things. Photon, right. Captain Marvel, Spectrum.
Yeah, so she's got like her photon form, she's got her gamma form, and
nice.
When she's in these different forms,
radiant energy forms. That's right.
When she's in these different forms in the game, they provide her different bonuses. So like her gamma form is like the one that like I stay in the most because that's like the damage dealing form and everything. That's her aggressive form, and she's got cards that if she's in the gamma form, she just does like buttloads and piles of damage type of thing. So it's been really good. The campaign is well paced. Like the very first scenario is Ebony Maw, and he's got all his like. He's got all this stuff flying at the heroes. Like he's got rubble and he's got cars and he's got all this stuff just automatic, just pounding the heroes left, right, and the center. And you just got to try to manage that and defeat them. And then there's I think the first time ever, there's a tower defense. Like there's like a castle defense type of scenario against Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive. They're attacking the Avengers Tower, and you just got to beat them off and defend the Avengers Tower before they actually overcome it.
Spoiler
alert. And then there's like the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. He's got his Infinity Gauntlet, and there's an Infinity Stone deck that you every turn he gets a new Infinity Stone, like blasting you, all different kinds of things. And then I don't know if I should spoil it on the show who the other two villains. Okay. Yeah, go read the back of the box.
Spoil it for yourself.
Yeah, spoil it for yourselves.
It's too new. It's too new.
Really neat storyline. Really neat storyline that they did with it. I think it's the best storyline that they came up with for a campaign.
Nice.
Yeah, it sounds really cohesive. I like that.
Now, my only thing is here, so this is the third campaign box that they've released for the game, and they've treated campaigns differently in each of the campaign boxes. Like the way that your characters build and grow in each campaign is completely different. Like in Red Skull, every other scenario, after you beat the scenario, it says, hey, take a look at these cards, pick one for your hero.
Oh, yeah,
And now you have it. In Galaxy's Most Wanted, there was a market, so you could earn victory points after a scenario, and you could spend your victory points to upgrade your hero, which I really liked. I liked that thing. My only downside on Galaxy's Most Wanted that it was very hard to earn experience points. And
There's
now
no cheat codes, man. No cheat codes.
And then in this campaign, you actually have to do something like there's like a side scheme that might come out, and if you manage to solve or beat that side scheme in the midst of everything else that's going on, you'll get some sort of bonuses that you can carry forward into new scenarios.
Cool.
Or if like certain villains or certain enemies engaged with you and you beat them, they no longer will appear later on in the campaign because you already beat them up in an earlier scenario type of thing.
Yeah.
So they're continuing this trend that they do the campaigns differently every single time.
Right on. So
and
your date.
Go ahead.
Sen. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, out of all three, you seem to like the middle one the best, where you get to point buy stuff.
So I like the way that they did the campaign on that one the best. The story wasn't as engaging for me,
right?
But I
you
like the way
point buy.
I like the point buying. Like,
yeah,
I earned my experience points. I'm leveling up, and I can buy this really, really powerful upgrade to my hero or something like that. I do kind of like what they did with the Mad Titan Shadow. Now I kind of wish they can. Now in the next one, Fantasy Flight, if you're listening, if you can combine the best of both of those campaigns into the next one, you're gonna have, because the next one's a Spider-Man campaign. I believe it's like Miles Morales and Ghost Spider are like the heroes, and and it's the Sinister Six type of thing coming in. So
right on.
Let me level up Miles. I want to level up Miles for Miles.
So you're saying that you'd like the side quests, but you earn points that you get to buy stuff with after.
He wants the full meal deal.
Nailed it.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I want.
Because when you go do the side quest and you're like, oh, that's the card I get for that?
Yeah. Like
you're maybe not so happy with that or whatever.
Like, agency to the outcome. Yeah.
Like, choice. Everybody, this one's already been spoiled. Everybody knows about this one. In the second scenario, the side scheme that comes out is the shawarma place.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so if you can protect the shawarma place, you get a shawarma card into your deck. And it provides you like mad resources because you eat your shawarma while you're beating up the bad guys, and now you got all this energy that you can spend.
It's like the biggest ad for shawarma ever. It's awesome.
It's amazing. It was amazing when I flipped that card over. I was like, "Yes, you guys are awesome."
Yeah, that is great.
Cool. So you're enjoying this? Awesome.
I am thoroughly enjoying it. Ranking of the villains that you get in this campaign overall, I think this set of villains, is the best set of the three campaigns.
Nice.
I like the Galaxy's Most Wanted campaign mode the best, but I like the set of villains that you get in this one because they do quite a bit different. They feel different when you're playing them.
All right. Right on. Well, as we mentioned at the top of the show, we have a special guest on this episode, and I'm gonna pitch it straight to Sen because you have something different, but still part of that whole storytelling genre of board games and such. So what do you got going on?
Sure, and it's actually kind of linked to what Ryan was saying. I've been playing this a lot lately, which is Masks: A New Generation, which is an RPG done using the PBTA engine, the Powered by the Apocalypse engine, written by the one Mr. Brendan Conway, published by Magpie Games, who I write for the Avatar Legends series, which is also using Powered by the Apocalypse. And so I've been running a campaign for a bunch of people who like are not real role players. So,
Okay.
and I don't mean like fake role players versus real role players. I mean like people who just never role play before. Like
Yeah.
one of them is like, I've never done this before. I was like, okay, good. Let's play a game together, you know? And so it's just a bunch of us who play. I'm the GM in this, but Masks is a game about superpowered teenagers. So if you can think of touchstones like Cloak and Dagger, New Mutants, Teen Titans, that kind of stuff, Young Justice. So very angsty, very relational, but also powerful, but maybe don't have full control of their powers. And that's what this game is all about. But my favorite, actually, like my favorite part of the game is that there's no stats like you'd think of stats. So okay, quick, Norm, what do you think some stats would be for superheroes?
Strength would be an obvious one.
Sure.
Speed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Agility.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but no, that's not the stats in this game. Let me tell you the stats. I'm just gonna find the stats in this game for you. The stats in this game are danger.
Yeah.
Freak.
Yeah.
What else is there? There's I gotta find the list. Where's the actual list? Oh, I'll just look at the character sheet here at the back.
See, my teacher brain's going, titles don't mean anything. What do they do? Like, what are they connected to?
No, they do totally mean things in this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I gotta find them for you so you understand.
I have to go into a schema shift because I'm all D&D kind of mentality.
Right, and that's the thing, right? That's why I like this game a lot. What grades do you teach?
I teach high school.
Right.
Yeah, grades. From Ontario, we don't have grade 13, so I 9.
We
10,
don't
11,
either
12.
anymore. We don't either anymore. No.
Okay.
Got rid of that a couple decades ago.
That's how long I've been paying attention.
Yeah, right. But like both of you teach teenagers, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you how this game works in terms of the stats. Really aren't stats; they're actually called labels. And
nice.
I can't find a character sheet. Where's a good character sheet?
This is cool because Brian and I at school have the board game club, and just before pandemic started, I started like an RPG kind of segment to it, and there was a good core group of kids, and then we went into pandemic, and then it just kind of went, okay, well, I hope that when we get back and are able to go full swing again, that I can get that RPG momentum to the group as well.
Yeah, because they loved it. They were eating that. They were eating that club up.
Well, and
that's great.
And like I've got kids on bikes and kids on brooms just because of that whole age segment to have a relational kind of context to
teens in space. Right?
Yeah.
I've written for most of those. That's good.
Oh, cool.
So here it's danger, freak, mundane, savior, and superior. Those are your stats. You're going, Sen, what do you mean those are stats? It's not strength or dexterity or wisdom or constitution or even comeliness. That's none of those things. Do you remember comeliness? From,
like, yeah. That's AD&D second edition. I remember that.
Horrible stat. So silly. So if you think about the teenagers that you teach or teenagers that you might even have as family members, you know that teenagers often like influence how they think about themselves by listening to other people.
Oh yeah.
Right? That's what this game is about. In this game, like when you change your character, you just shift your labels. I feel more dangerous today, or I feel more superior. And you can go up and down. Like I feel less superior. I feel more like a savior today than I feel. I don't feel mundane at all. I feel like a freak.
Okay,
right? It's really cool because if you think about it, even just from a psychological perspective, the idea of, if a villain like laughed in your face, all of a sudden you might feel, not so secure anymore, right? And it doesn't matter how strong you are or how fast you are, you still feel insecure. So you're not going to perform as well, right? So it's all about the labels that we take for ourselves and that other people put on us. And that sometimes we might, by our own actions, change how we think about ourselves.
It's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's really, really cool because it's teenagers in a nutshell. And I love
this
teenagers.
Is making my brain fire off because in parent-teacher interviews, a lot of the times I'll tell some parents that, not to worry because they're just trying on different masks right now.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And then it's like, oh my God, that's the title. Right. So It's a cool kind of a facade wrapped around that psychological idea
Yeah,
of personality.
it's really, really quick to make a very fleshed out character because they're playbooks, right? So
Yeah.
PBTA, Powered by Apocalypse, runs off of playbooks where you pick an archetype and then you kind of choose some things here and there. But most of people of that archetype are like that. And then there's only one archetype of each archetype per play group. So you can't have 7 fighters and 1 wizard.
Yeah.
You have to have, one of each thing, which makes for a more well-rounded story. And the thing about the moves that you can do, so you can do moves that are very like power oriented, but none of the moves are like you have a fire blast. It's more like you're engaging a foe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how do I engage my foe? Well, how do you think you engage your foe?
Okay.
What kind of character are you? So if you were, let's say we're talking Spider-Man, Spider-Man would say something in the narrative like, I cartwheel over his head, spinning backwards, wink at him as I'm shooting webs in his eyes to blind him, right? You say, okay, roll to directly engage a threat, because it sounds like you tried to directly engage the threat. And then he might say, no, I'm actually trying to, provoke him into attack me. Oh, okay, roll to provoke.
Okay.
Right. So the narrative drives the move.
Nice.
The move isn't necessarily, a specific power like flight or anything like that.
Yeah.
You might have that,
Yeah.
but it's really in how you describe the narrative. So there's a lot of narrative control, which is really good for, people who don't like to talk. In some ways, it's good to get them out of the shell, right? And it's also really good for people who maybe have that flair about wanting to describe a situation, and then you as a GM are listening and say, oh, it sounds like you're trying to defend
prompting
somebody, or it sounds like you're trying to do this other thing. Yeah. And then they can describe it a little more.
Yeah.
And then PBTA, if you don't know the dicing system, for you math nerds out there, which is like all of us in this room, you roll 2d6. That's it. It's just 2d6. There's not like any funky shaped dice. It's 2d6. And those of you who are math nerds, which is like all of us in this room, will understand when I say 0 to 6 is a failure, 7 to 10 is a marginal success, and 11 and 12 is a superior success. Makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
And it's really simple. So a marginal success means most likely it's like what you did what you want, but there's probably a consequence, or they hit you back, or it's unstable because you're not as powerful as you thought you were, or you don't have the control you thought you did, or there's a cost to it in some way. And then a superior one is maybe you get 2 choices instead of 1 choice. Maybe you get a choice with no consequence whatsoever. So it's real easy to play. The math is super simple. And you don't gain experience like in D&D. You gain experience by killing things, and killing things gets you more experience to get more stuff to kill more things. In PBTA games, typically, you don't get experience. You actually get potential. And you only get it when you fail a roll. So the more you fail the roll, the more potential. Yeah, you learn some more from that.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. And in fact, all the failures always make the stories more interesting. So
and
it's a really cool system.
I was going to ask you too, like, because I DM a lot of stuff in the 5e, and there's what I'm noticing or listening to here is that the consequential results are they narratively developed by the GM and the player, or are there in your campaign scenario, or do you have arc lines that you're following?
You might have arc lines that you're following, but you're generally for me, this is a no prep game. I do absolutely no prep. You might have seen some of my stuff that I do afterwards, where I have this like big like flow chart or mind map of everybody who's interconnected now. But that's all my players did that all. I didn't think of any of that.
Yeah.
They designed all of that, and I just archive it for them, right? But let's say, so here's an example of a move, directly engage a threat. When you directly engage a threat, however you decided to do that, like I fly through the air and hit him with a clothesline as I'm moving.
And it's all narratively driven, right?
Yeah. And so, you roll to, roll plus danger, right? Because directly engaging a threat involves how dangerous you think you are. as a person, right? Because you've seen those cartoons or comics when there's a hero who's like super powerful but is very meek.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they would probably, it doesn't matter how powerful they are, they're not going to engage a threat. Whereas those little feisty people who are like maybe not super powerful, but are fighters, like just mentality wise.
You
Like,
described half my family. So
well, or like for those of you who are Canadian, like all of us, and who
yeah. Yeah.
may remember things like Alpha Flight,
Oh,
like, right?
yeah.
Like Puck. Puck would have a pretty decent high danger because he has almost like, we don't really know what Puck's powers are, to be honest. I'm sure somewhere in my collected Marvel universes I do know what Puck's powers are, but when you just basically see Puck is like this little short guy dressed in black with a P on his chest, like a puck, like a hockey puck. And he does cartwheels and rolls around. And he's kind of strong, but not really super strong or anything like that. But anyways, he will fight tooth and nail to protect Canada and what Canada stands for. Anyway, so if you roll 2d6 on this, and you roll 2d6 and then you add your stat, whether it's positive or negative, you add danger. Say you have say you're Puck and you have like a +2 danger. That's a really good danger. Then if you roll 10 or more, once you combine it all, you pick 2 from this list. If you rolled 7 or 9, you pick 1. And how to do this list is like, you resist or avoid their blows. You take something from them. You create an opportunity for your allies. You impress, surprise, or frighten the opposition. That's your list, right? And then if you don't take resist or avoid their blow, the next thing you're going to be doing is you take a powerful blow, because anytime you hit them, they hit you.
Yeah.
There's no initiative. There's no like tactical battle map. It's like all theater of mind.
Yeah.
But all those things mean different things. Like, take something from them. Okay, what do you take from them? Sometimes it's really physical. Like, I take the staff that they were just aiming at me. Sometimes it's like I take their pride. Oh, that's interesting. How do you do that? Well, I'm going to do this. And, isn't that impress, surprise, or frighten? No. I actually, I take their sense of pride by pantsing them in front of their audience. Oh, okay.
This is very cool, because as Ryan remembers, I used to teach drama and then moved over to French immersion.
Perfect.
So these are all improv prompts that are listed, where you're able to go, okay, we're going this direction, we're going this direction. How do you respond? How do you react?
Right. And you as the GM can react to their prompts too, right?
Yeah. And
which is great.
Yeah. And each kind of strategy objective resolution is the development of the next scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and Ryan's gonna laugh, because Ryan, guess what page I have up over here? I might have to, it's like, put this in my cart. Yes, please. so I've got Masks, a New Generation right in front of me, and
there you go.
You've sold me completely.
Yeah, it's a great system. I adore it. Like, I really am very smitten by it. So yeah, it's easy to GM. You don't have, just like any role-playing game, you don't have to use all the stuff in the book. But the book does a really good job. One of my favorite things about the book is the language that it teaches players and GMs to use by just giving descriptions, like by giving like examples of what players would say and how a GM would respond. Yeah. Because it's slightly turned on its head from like most regular GMing. So anyway, I'm loving that flip of perspective on how you can approach a character and approach abilities. Yeah. So it's more like Kids on Bikes than D&D, if you had to pick.
Well, I like the fact that whenever we have guests on the show, we spend money.
Yeah.
It seems to be a trend lately.
That's a thing.
It's a thing.
I'm going to quickly blurb on what I played, because it was really cool and I want to play more. And that's War of Whispers. And I think the first time I caught wind of this was Shut Up and Sit Down, did a review on it. And I don't know if it's the games that they pick work for me, or is it the fact that they package something up so well that I just buy it regardless.
Oh, Shut Up and Sit Down?
Yeah.
That Jay and I were literally just talking about this before, because we found out, just like whisper, that Quinn's has played Mind Management and enjoyed it.
Nice.
So we're like, please, give us
feature.
a little airtime. Well, so the thing is that they they are probably. I mean, I'm gonna go on a limb here, as I am a limb,
Yeah.
and say that they are 100% the most influential reviewers out there. I think,
Mm,
like their word sells games, and I think it's because they are, they give their opinion very clearly. And the most of their piece is entirely opinion,
hmm.
and if you agree with it, you're gonna buy it. Whereas a lot of other reviewers, like 90% of their review is a rehash of the rules
Overview.
that I can
Yeah.
read for myself
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
another site.
And
So
what I like about them is that they're clever with the wording and the
sure.
pacing of their script,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. They make you feel clever too for liking them. Right?
Yeah.
So
And I mean, and of course, just for me too, the appeal of that British accent, because nostalgically for me, it's right away I'm like, okay, this could be Monty Python in a split second for me, and I'll just be like happier than anything, right? So, but yeah, when they put War of Whispers on and they talked about it and they said this is kind of like Risk, but instead of being the countries, you're the manipulators in the background, the advisors that are pulling the strings.
oh, see, I
And that,
love it already.
yeah,
I haven't even heard of this.
oh,
But I'm
cool,
like, I'm all over this. See,
yeah,
now you guys got me spending money.
yay.
What's up with that?
So how it is you got this world in front of you, and the board's round. I love that right away.
Mm.
And you have this world in front of you with kind of five areas of nations, and there's like the bear faction, the mammoth, the horse riders.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, there's five factions that have unique variances to them, right? And around the board, each faction has council seats that you as players put your advisors and go to manipulate different courts to move, because how it all
So
works, and this
we're
is
all Varric the spider.
yeah, how it all works is in front of you you have five positions, and on the far left is a city times 4, and then the next one is a city times 2, and then the middle one is city times 0, and then I think the last one, that there's that kind of range
Yeah.
of point selection. So you have these little discs that have the symbol of the countries that are on the board. You randomly put them out, and then you put them face down on your player tableau, and you have a look to see, okay, who's my country that's going to score me 4 points per city. And so that's where you're pushing and pulling this whole board, and not only that, when I played it was a 3-player, and immediately noticed that you can will all you want the movement on this board, but you need to pay attention to what everybody else is wanting to push, because my 4-pointer could be both of my other opponents -1s,
right?
So I could be just in this futile endeavor of trying to keep them strong. And after so there's I think 4 rounds, 4 rounds, and after every round, just before you start the next round, you have the option of going, I can switch my bet.
Oh,
But if I switch my bet, I have to reveal it.
Right, that makes sense.
Right.
I can see the design in my head. So
yeah,
good.
right. So and then there's cards in this whole thing as well, because the cards, those are those rule breakers where it's like, oh, you know what? Any empty thing in this country, I'm going to put a banner, which is an army.
Right.
And man, I was just thinking for days after this game.
Who's the publisher and the designer?
This is, I've got it right in front of me here. This is, come on, internet speed. This is designed by Jeremy Stoltzfus, and it's published by Starling Games.
Oh, okay, cool.
And they've had to do a second edition already, because the first one just sold out. So yeah, I was talking about this one a while, Ryan, where it's like, yeah, we got to try this one, because it's not a take that. It's a don't watch what I'm doing, because I'm just going to
watch the left hand, because so you don't see what the right hand's doing.
Exactly.
So
it's obfuscation, the game.
Yeah, you've talked about this one quite a while. We just never had it line up where we could play it. And this one seems like it would benefit at like having the max number of players.
Oh yeah, what is the player count?
4? Yeah, up to 4.
Up to 4.
I think maybe there's an expansion or talk of expansion, but more than 4, I could see it just being chaotic. Like
too much to track.
ADHD. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that's saying coming from me, right?
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed this. I can't wait to play it again. So I hope,
Sounds fascinating.
yeah, cool.
I love
We'll
it.
bump out of that, and let's come in back for the big interview section. So I will bring us back in, and then Ryan, I'll pitch it to you to reintroduce, and then I can guide us through this whole process.
Take it away, Norm.
All right, coming back in. And we're back. This is Cardboard Conjecture. We're going straight into one of my favorite topics is the Designers series. And Ryan, why don't you reintroduce our guest?
Sure. So if you're just joining in on the podcast right in this moment, and you haven't listened to everything else beforehand, we have a special guest, Sen-Foong Lim, friend of the show. He's been on the show a few times before,
I think this is your
too.
third time.
I think that might be number 3 because last time we had him on, we were talking the Coded Chronicles game series, which, by the way, A-OK in my book. I'm loving them.
Thank you.
We really enjoyed the Scooby-Doo one. That was fantastic. We haven't had a chance to play The Shining yet, but I want to get my hands on the Goonies.
Oh yeah,
that one looks fantastic.
Yeah, that
cool.
one is good.
Okay, so the way I like to do this structure, I'm a big fan of James Lipton from the how he goes. Let's go back to your childhood because that is an influence on what's.
It totally is.
It is, and that's why I like peanut butter, right? What is it? Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Watching the Flintstones. So early influences. Let's start off.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? And I mean, you could throw down the decade, the era,
Sure.
and the geography because we're Canadians at this table.
I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, which is the hub of the Great Lakes. So it's at the meeting point of Superior and Erie and Huron. And I grew up there in the 70s and the 80s. And then I moved to Hamilton from one steel town to another steel town. And then I ended up in London to work at a clinic here after many, many years of working at clinics elsewhere. But yeah, and now I teach at the college here in London, Ontario, Canada. So Canadian born and bred. And my influences are from being a northerner, which is like nothing is up there. It is cold and bitter and cold. That's what it is.
So basically Saskatchewan with lakes around you.
Yeah, think of Saskatchewan with a lake effect.
Yeah, because you must get some bitter cold coming off those Great Lakes.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's basically. So I've been all over the country. Portage in Maine is friggin' windy and cold, but you don't have like it coming off the water. When it comes off the water, it's just a different. It's a wet, penetrating cold. And so
warm up.
I live on the other side of the lakes now, and we get this like dry, fluffy snow, and like, so what is this? Because I'm used to like wet, heavy snow piled like 6 to 10 feet high. Like people where I live now, they don't believe me when I say I used to walk home on snow piles that were 10 feet high. Because you'd shovel the snow and the snow from the roads and would go into these big piles in your ditch. Yeah. And then we would walk home on the top of them because if you walked home on the sidewalk, because you clear the sidewalk, but if you walked home on the sidewalks, cars couldn't see you. And so they might pull out. Yeah. But if you walk on the top, you might fall 10 feet down. That would hurt.
They would see the other way, they'd just see this toque.
Very Canadian of you to see a toque. And like, I mean, I used to ski to school, so I mean, it's wet and cold and rainy and yucky.
Well, but
also super nice.
Let's get to some geek foundations of like bedrock of where you are now. And I know that you and Ryan are gonna like start bonding because I think you guys probably consume the same video games and the same comic books. So let's start there. Like
maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Growing up, what kind of video games were you like? Were you? It was sort of like, I own this game. Nobody can dethrone me.
I mean, not really. I was I loved like stand up like coin op games.
Mm.
But I really wasn't allowed to play many of them because they cost money. So I like really liked hanging out at the Safeway when my dad was shopping. I would just watch the older kids play like Omega Race and stuff like that, like vector graphics type stuff. But my dad, because he's an engineer and engineers do stuff like buy the best computer you can for thousands and thousands of dollars when it has 64K of RAM. And so my weapon of choice was the Commodore 64. And so I loved like I still have like distinct memories of probably my favorite game was Archon, which is
Oh
it's like
man.
combat chess.
Yeah, yeah.
I loved Archon. I loved Mule. These are all Electronic Arts games, by the way.
Yeah.
Raid on Bungling Bay, which was a Broderbund helicopter, kind of like Blue Thunder, Airwolf kind of
I'm having
game,
flashbacks right now.
right? Impossible Mission, and all of the like. So this was at the very end of it, and this leads back to Coded Chronicles, was all of the um, games that you could like the Sierra Quest games and stuff was a little later than that.
Yeah, yeah.
So those were the types of games I like to play. Point and click adventures, Monkey Island, Curse of Monkey Island.
And
You know,
those are
Zack
all a lot
McCracken.
of story-driven games too.
Oh yeah, tons of those. That's exactly why we
Yeah.
made Coded Chronicles based on our mutual love of point and click adventure games.
See, and
So
that's why
Jay and I
like
both
going
love
back.
those things. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, even like Zork and Suspended and all of those Infocom games, I can still play them. I still remember exactly what steps to make in those games. I love those games.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's what I played a lot of. Mostly lonely kid in the basement games.
Well, on the best computer around.
Wow. I mean, at the time, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so now in the reading material area, I was kind of mainstream. I was a Marvel kid when I went and got my stuff. But Ryan, I think you're like on the master level of your
I wouldn't call it master level, but I am
compared to me.
I am a fanboy.
Yeah. What kind of reading material do you consume, or did you consume, or have you grown up?
Oh, I mean, so it's funny. So like I was finished reading Lord of the Rings when I was like 6 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Was when I finished reading Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
Yeah, my mom is from England, and so she would always listen to the BBC, and the BBC always was talking about, Tolkien this and Tolkien that at this specific time in the 70s.
Yeah.
And so she said, "Oh, you should read that." And it's like, okay, and I did, and I finished it, and then I was like, okay, now what? And so my parents decided to drop me off in the basement of the local university to play Dungeons and Dragons, and that's where I actually started gaming. Was when I was 6 years old playing
Holy moly.
Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, it was chainmail at the time, right? So playing chainmail and then Dungeons and Dragons as a 6-year-old with like college students and university students and their professors.
Wow.
That's how I grew up. Because my parents didn't know what to do with me. They were like, "You're precocious. Go do something that will keep you out of trouble.
Go challenge your intellect."
Yeah, something like that. And it's funny. My dad today was telling a banker, "Do you know how long my son was at university? He was at university for like 9 years because he was." I don't know what he's going on about today, but he was just, they think I did, and it's true. They were always really mad at me, not mad, just like disappointed that I didn't focus and that I was a dabbler. My mom called me a dabbler. And they took me to a psychologist when I was a kid. Funny because I teach psychology now. But they took me to a psychologist as a kid, and they were even more mad when the psychologist tested me and said, "Yeah, he can do whatever he wants. He's, super smart. So whatever he wants to do, let him do."
Yeah.
And they're like, "But he just dabbles. He doesn't focus on anything."
It doesn't finish because he's figured it out in his head.
That's it too. I never used to finish things until I partnered up with Jay, and this will become a very relevant thing later in terms of I finished everything in my head exactly. And it was my gifted teacher, Mrs. Sarter, who I love to death. So much so that I dated her daughter. I don't know. That was a weird thing. But Mrs. Starter told me in like grade 4 or 5 or something like that. You know why you never finish anything? And then she went on to explain that
Yeah.
whole thing. Like, you never finish anything because of this. And what do you think about that? And I was like, I don't know. And then it wasn't until I met Jay, and then many years after meeting Jay, we said, let's make games. And he's like, well, we got to actually make it. I said, really? Can't I just think about it? And so he was the one to really get it out of my head, which was perfect because without him, I wouldn't actually do this. Right.
Yeah.
I need to co-design because I'm too cerebral. Like I'm too like up in
Mhm.
my head. Oh, but getting back to reading material. So here's the story of my comic books. My it sounds stereotypical, I know, but my aunt and uncle owned a grocery store, like a corner store,
Yep.
which is a very Chinese thing to do, a very Asian thing to do. But what they did was they kept one of every comic book for my cousins
Nice.
since like 1960 something.
Whoa.
So their entire garage um, was full of comic books. I'm not talking like on the wall. I'm talking stacked flat.
Yeah.
So anything from like that era, I've read, like held in my hands and read. Um, like I think I still have like Hulk 181 and stuff like that from the early 80s, and I have a lot of comics from that era still. But they kept one of everything because why not?
Yeah.
They ordered like 20 of everything, so whatever didn't sell, they kept one of. Whatever sold, they still kept one of because
Mhm.
the boys really wanted. So I would go over to my aunt's house and uncle's house and read comics all the time. And then when I left their house, I would take a whole bag with me and I just return it. It was like a library for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've read probably everything because I don't think they got Marvel. I have all that Marvel stuff from later days, but um, they had a lot of DC. Like that, I think that's all they ordered was DC at the time. And so, like, if you've ever seen the covers of like the Justice League and then
Yeah,
the
yeah.
League of Villains playing sports against each other. Have you ever seen those kinds of covers?
Yep,
I
yep.
had
The
I had all of
one-offs?
those.
Yeah.
They're hilarious. So I have like giant size omnibuses of things because they're like weird, like they're like 3 feet tall and
Oh, the oversized stuff.
wide.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
have a bunch of that stuff, both Marvel and DC. But I mean, and none of it's in great condition. A lot of it is like written in, or some kids have done stuff with it. But the point is that like that's all I read as a kid.
Well, see,
And then I lived in the library, so I love libraries. I think I've read every single like Tom Swift,
and,
Hardy Boys, anything that was an anthology series I loved. Anything that was a series I loved. I just loved continuation of character.
and this
Yeah.
is what I'm putting together from listening to this is you've pretty much seen and read every storyline and story splinter and character splinter and because of the amount of stories that you've consumed, you pretty much got like a mind map of any which way that you can navigate a narrative.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny because if you bring up things like Scooby Doo, Warner Brothers asked us actually when they read my writing, they're like, "Oh, which episode was this from?" Right? Because it was like it's not from any episode. I just
Yeah.
wrote it out of my head
Yeah.
because I've literally watched every single thing of Scooby Doo ever.
So
if,
you
if it's
just,
got Scooby Doo in it, I've watched it.
so you
And
just
if it's like
fell into it.
a comic of it,
Yeah.
I've probably read it. I don't necessarily. I have read a lot of like the kid stuff, but if it's an adult comic like the Scooby Doo one that was the Scooby Doo Apocalypse was great. I read that. That's wonderful. It was super fun. But yeah, like I've literally consumed every single iota of Scooby Doo media that can be consumed. If it's video, 100% I've done it.
Mhm.
If it's written, that's a little harder to get my hands on all of it, but I have read a lot of Scooby Doo comics and
Now, when you're
books and
reading,
things.
how are
Yeah.
you processing this? Are you processing this from a point of view of I'm going to enjoy the story, or are you processing it from a point of view of this is how they're building the story?
Both. So I do screenwriting and I'm working on comics and things
Yeah.
like that. You know, it's nothing special or great at this time, but it is something that I hope to do. I think I probably wanted to be a writer more than I wanted to be a game designer.
But it's intrinsically motivated. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's even more so because all I do is I set a goal. I set a word goal. I have a program. My writing program actually every day says, "Hey, write 500 words," and I do because it told me to. And so something gets out, and like so that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like a lot of people say, "How do you do so much?" A computer told me to. Right? And that's
Simple.
paranoia for you if you've ever played paranoia. I'm friends with the computer. The computer told me to, so I'm going to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to get disintegrated, and then my clone will come out.
Yes, Hal.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I'm a firm believer of just getting stuff out now, so much more than I was when I was a kid, when I'd hold it all up in here.
It's funny, even today in the classroom, because kids are into final projects and doing research, and I told them, they're like, I could seem frustrated. I said, don't edit, just put it on the paper.
Yeah.
Edit later. Just
Edit
let
later.
it flow. Edit later. And because it's French immersion, a
Yeah.
lot of them were like, because they thought, oh, I have to write my notes in French. And went, if you're consuming the media, like your research in English, write the notes in English and translate it later. Get that flow going and do the fine tune after, like rough cut. Get some rough cuts done and then finish it later.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Editing is such an art form too that if you're trying to learn how to edit while you're trying to learn how to write, you're probably going to fail at both,
Yeah,
unfortunately. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in just now getting my writing out instead of leaving it up here. And yes, editing it later, like much later. Like I write to word count for most RPGs are done by word count, unfortunately. So it's like 2,000 words. Okay, here's 2,000 words. And then they give me, notes back and say, okay, now I'm going to edit it. Like I might edit a first pass, just like a light edit.
Yeah.
But until you give me notes, I'm not going to spend my time actually editing that all the time because I know you're going to want changes. So
you're not going to chase.
Wait.
You're not going to chase your tail for no reason.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Cool.
I mean, I'll do like the first pass is like, does this make sense? Is the spelling correct and the grammar correct? Because it's for an audience who's not just me. And then I pass it on, and people give me notes, and then I put much more effort into editing it to their tastes and things like that. So
yeah, like director's notes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So lots of comics, lots of like I lived in the library as a kid. I would bike to the library with a backpack full of books to drop off and pick a backpack full of books up. And then chances are I would be there, if not 2 days, 3 days from after that. Because you're only allowed to take 10 books out as a kid. You had a limit. So I had 10 books. I would read them in like 2 or 3 days. And I'd go back every 2 or 3 days. Yeah, that was my summer. My summer was just reading. And I have, I wouldn't say I have a photographic memory, but I have a really good memory. Although I'm getting old now. I'm turning 49 tomorrow. So it's not as good as it used to be, but I remember things that I've read.
You got the mind palace thing going
really
on,
quite well. And if I drew it, I remember it even better. And if I wrote it and drew it, I remember it even better than that. So yeah, there's a lot of the of that kind of stuff. So I can see I can see right now. I can see Thunderbird dying in X-Men right now in my head, right? So I can see all these things just the way they were drawn.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about all
a lot
the
of
stuff
cognitive triggers kind of thing.
Yeah, but all of that helps me with my writing because I try not to be super tropey and I try not to just like pull directly from the source, but there is something to be said about touchstones and cultural touchstones that people like and want and that resonate with them and mean something to them.
And then you're able to filter it and interpret it into your own perspective. And
it also makes you a little bit of a hard ass when like the Marvel movies first came out, or the X-Men, even worse, the X-Men movies came out. And you're like, this is not the X-Men.
This was not it.
Or even worse, this is not the Fantastic Four. Those were horrible movies.
Strike two.
Yeah. But I think reading is one of my favorite things. I don't know if you were looking at my Twitter the other day, but I wrote something like, hey, if you were a ghost, where would you want to haunt? because my friend said that he'd want to haunt library, and I'm like, you are right. I would haunt a library too, guaranteed. I love libraries.
It's like, pick that book, pick that book. Oh, I haven't read that one yet. Cool. We have mentioned that you've got this duality in education and instruction, and you have been on the show when we had a little stint called Cardboard in the Classroom, prior to all of this chaos of our reality, and so quickly, does one contribute to the other, or is there kind of an evaluative approach that you have in instructional design that brings into game design?
I think both really do play off each other really well, because in the end, I design for experience, right? That's what I'm doing, both when I'm teaching and when I'm making a game, because ostensibly a game can teach, and you can teach through a game, so why not? So yeah, I believe both are cultured, designed experiences in a box or in a classroom or in a setting or whatever, however you're delivering it. They are specifically intentional, and they are experiences that are meant to be experienced in some specific way, but it's okay if people experience in slightly different ways.
Cool.
But yeah, like I have intention when I write tests. I have intention when I make exams and slides, and even my course layout in my course shell for my online classes. Every day is the same, but not the same content, but I mean, it's laid out exactly the same. So my students know at the top are the slide deck. The second one are the videos I expect you to watch the day before the class. The routine stuff under that is your quizzes or assignments that are due tonight at midnight. And then the stuff after that is stuff that's due next week at midnight, the week after, right? So because I teach each class once a week. And so by intentionally designing things in a way that the layout matters, in a way that the wording matters and the content matters, the experience that those students are gonna have is very different than if I just said, here are all the videos and here are all the tests, and I do that as well, though. I have like a page, like if you're looking for just assignments, here's all the assignments, but they're cross-linked, so they go into the right slots in the learning management system, right? And then game design is I do a lot of not necessarily teaching in my game design, but I use aspects of teaching in game design, for things like just even standard educational theory stuff like Vygotsky, zone of proximal development stuff or whatever, where it's like, okay, so if you think about it from a role-playing perspective, a lot of times like the GM is really the teacher, and the students are the players, and that zone of proximal development is what you can do together, right? Like without the GM, you can't really go very far. So you need that GM to kind of pull you across the gap of what you can do. But anyway, so I use a lot of developmental theory, design theory together when I'm making games to make sure that they're age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, that kind of stuff. And then teaching strategies in game design for things like, even just again, Vygotsky, stuff like scaffolding things in so that you can later take them away. So as you get experience, we're going to take that scaffolding away, so you no longer have to think about it, do it. You're just automatically kind of doing the thing you're supposed to do. It
turns innate,
Yeah, so we do that in game design by starting off with these scaffolded experiences, take those things away, and now you're doing stuff fully. And I'm sure, Ryan, that like in that in like the campaigns for Marvel Heroes, Marvel Champions, that there's probably some scaffolding in there, like in the earlier campaigns, like remember to do this, remember to do that in the instructions, and then for the second and third parts of those campaigns, like just go for it, dude.
It's programmed. You just do it.
Yeah. And so a lot of that stuff from instructional design is making the rule books better, making that kind of first teachable level that isn't quite a level to play, but it's a level to learn on, right? That's the stuff that I didn't start doing, but I'm thinking about it more and more now. Like, how do we make the first level like an introductory level where stuff is scaffolded in, where stuff
Yeah.
is done in a way that makes a lot of sense for players, so that when we expect it to play the full game, they've already got some background knowledge and can play fluently instead of kind of like always checking the rules, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about it. I'd have to actually sit and think about actual aspects of that. But I definitely would like to. I actually like to do that at some point when I have some downtime to think about. Okay, so what instructional design, um, you know, touchstones can we apply
Yeah.
to game design? Because design is design in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, but then it's just the focus. What is the focus of this design versus this design, and what can I bring from one to the other? My favorite thing to actually do uh, isn't game design. Um, when I'm like reading
Yeah.
or like listening to podcasts, I get really actually very interested in what other professions could bring to game design, right? So what could instructional design bring to game design? What could teaching bring to game design? What could, whatever else
Hmm.
profession bring to game design? That's what I'm interested in, because I've listened to most of the big names in game design for so long that I could repeat exactly what they
Yeah.
said, or I've said it so much that I think I said it, but they probably said it. But the stuff that I hear from other perspectives and other professions, and just even new people coming into game design, is so refreshing and so interesting that it's like, oh, I wish I would have known this 15 years ago.
It's
Or you said something that I've been trying to say, but you said it so much differently
Mm.
and so much better because of your fresher perspective.
yeah.
So that's what I like. So
I
yeah, it's a
like
great question.
and I mean, that's just the joy of stepping out of your comfort area and appreciating something else that can influence, that have that eureka moment and go, oh, there's where I can cross into this, and this is where this can cross into
Yeah.
that. And not necessarily have to be part of, the direction that you're going, kind of thing.
No, it really is like a growth mindset towards game design, right? Or towards
Yeah.
design at all. What
um
can you learn from other people?
let's quickly move down. I'm just looking at our clock, and let's talk
Talk a
about some
lot.
of your yeah let's talk about some of your games. And
Sure.
um like at first we're going to go through the beginnings to the current, but um how about we start with what's going on now and just move backwards, because I think uh, um just from our talk, all the everything from the past has contributed to the growth of what's going on now. So let's talk about what's interesting and new now. And um, I'd like to I'd like to I'd like to bring our attention to you had mentioned this already, mind management.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, give us a quick talk about off the page games that you and Jay, this initiative, and the first title coming out of this
Sure.
new publishing foray.
Yeah. So it's really just Jay that's doing the publishing. So we I actually talked to him today. He was interviewing me for something that he's doing. Jay has an exit plan, and I'm part of the exit plan, but not part of that exit plan. So his exit plan from work is trying to figure out how to monetize game design in different ways and whatnot, which is great. But I like my job, so I'll stay in my job. But part of that is off the page games. And Jay said, so here's the big story. The big long story is this: Mind Management was with a publisher.
Yeah.
And then it was with another publisher because of stuff that happened with the first publisher. And then the second publisher folded before they published it. And Jay and I are like, damn, we don't want to have to pitch this again, because pitching a game is one thing,
Yeah.
but pitching it when it already has a license is another thing. Because it's like, oh, it does, do I have to pay the license fees and all that
The
kind of stuff?
legalities. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot more stuff to worry about. And then one day Jay said, or actually Matt Kint, the artist and writer for Mind Management, the comic book, said, hey guys, I run Kickstarters by myself all the time, and I make like, $60,000 clear by doing all the work myself. And we're like, yeah, but we have other jobs. He goes, no, 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 I'll help. I'll do all that stuff. And so
Nice.
Matt took a lot of it on. And so our partnership with Matt is very different than a regular partnership with a regular licensor. Like a regular licensor like Marvel is not going to do any work.
Yeah. It's kind of a co-pro, right? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
taking my perspective from the theater world where
Yeah.
you bring in two entities together
Yeah.
to produce something. Yeah.
And so Jay was like, well, okay, and let's talk. So we talked together, and at the end of it, Jay's like, well, what if I just did this myself? And I said, well, what if you just did this yourself? Because I don't, this isn't something that I've ever wanted to do. I
Yeah.
don't want to necessarily be a publisher. Someday maybe I'll have like a little brand that does one game just because it's the only game I want to do.
Yeah.
That would be fine. But Jay has a vision towards moving towards publication, which is totally fine, given his his situation at work. That he has been there for 25 years. He's like, yeah, maybe it's time to do something else.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it's like, yeah, I've only really been at the college for 7 years full time and 5 years part time before that. So I've got some years in me before I think it's
You
time
still
to
got
go.
things you want to do. Yeah.
Sure, right? And so it's like, yeah, why don't you do this yourself? And then obviously I'll help you because we're partners, but I don't need to have a stake
Yeah.
in this, like monetarily or decision making.
He can be
Like,
on point. Yeah.
yeah, well, that's the thing, and you can make these decisions without having to ask me. I'm happy if you do ask me. I'm more than happy to help you, but you don't have to ask me. And we've been talking lately about what if Sen was a silent partner, and just provided money, right? And that would be fine too. It's like, yeah, I don't need to make any of the decisions, but if you need financial support to make this something, because the pandemic happened is really
Yeah.
why we're having this talk. It's like shipping costs are like 7 times as much as they used to be. We need to figure something out to make everything work. Anyway, long story short, is that Off the Page Games is Jay, and Jay had the vision to say it's only going to be with creator-owned comic books. Why? Because we like creator-owned comic
Yeah.
books. A lot of our favorite books as adults are creator-owned, and there's a lot less red tape. Like, you don't have to deal with Marvel's lawyers, which is a good thing. We just deal directly with the artist and the writer, with their agents maybe, and it's turned out to be a really good relationship for what has happened so far. We've got Mind Management, which was a New York Times bestselling graphic novel from Matt Kint about psychic agents who are putting a stop to global domination from the company they used to work for.
Yeah.
So the agency they used to work for is trying to take over the world. And so this is our take on hidden movement. So one versus many hidden movement. And we like hidden movement games. Like we love that kind of stuff. I love deduction and logic games. And we thought this. So I don't know if you've noticed, but Jay and I have kind of one of almost every type of game. Well, I mean, not every type of game. Like, I don't think we have like a miniatures war game yet. But
you explore as designers, which is awesome.
yeah, which was actually our intention from the get-go. We actually have a saying called MVP, which is the V is for variety, the P is for persistence, the M is for motivation. But Jay will talk about this more if you ever want to talk to him about this. The idea is that the V is versatility, really, is that we wanted to show publishers that we could make any kind of game and make a good version of any kind of game. And I think we've actually succeeded in that. Like we've made a really good Euro game in Belfort. We made a really good tiling exploration game in Akrotiri. We made a really good party game in But Wait, There's More. We've made a really good escape room in a box game with Scooby-Doo. So, are they all perfect? No. Are they in the top 10 on BGG? No, but
it shows a diversity.
999 million other games that aren't either. So
it shows a diversity in craftsmanship too.
And that's it. So like, I mean, and this is absolutely no knock on Vital or like Matt.
Yeah.
Leacock. They're both, you know, people I
They like
know,
their
and Matt's a good
groove.
friend of mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are in a groove and they do what they do.
Yeah.
And you know a Feldian game when you see one,
Yeah.
and you know if you're gonna like it or not because it's gonna be very similar but kind of different, right?
Yeah.
Same with Matt's games. Same with lots of designers kind of have a niche and they kind of stick to it. There's not a lot of designers out there who do wide and varied stuff. Like I'd say, we do that, and Vlad does it. Where party game like Codenames and Mage Knight,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So there are definitely people who do what we do, and some that might even do it better, like Laja. But the idea behind that for us was really, finding a niche in the industry where people would come to us and say, "So we see that you can do like any type of game. We have an idea, we have a license, but we
Yeah.
don't know how to execute it. What do you think you could do that?" Yes, we could.
Oh,
right?
well, and that's the brilliant thing is that you have the repertoire to go.
Yeah.
Look at our range. Yeah.
That's it. Like we're like jack of all trades, masters of none, I guess. But that's not a bad thing.
But that's
When
the most
you're
humble thing to say too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
in-
just
in
like
some
you're
of the-
always
in-
working towards it.
yeah, in this industry. So like when the Scooby Doo project came up, when Crota Chronicles came up, that was literally just friends at the op who knew us, knew that we like Scooby Doo. That was part of it. But they also thought, oh, Sen and Jay, they can kind of design anything. Do you think they could do an escape room? Well, I don't know. Why don't you ask them? Okay, ask them. And they asked us, and we're like, yeah, we could do that. And we said, oh, I already do that in school. And Jay's like, oh, I've already done that for work. And it's like, oh, good. Okay, so pitch us an idea. And we pitched them this idea that wasn't exactly Coded Chronicles, but turned into Coded Chronicles, and it's probably better because it didn't
Yeah.
do what we did before or what we were gonna do. But really, what separates Coded Chronicles from a lot of other escape room is that narrative, right? But also the IP. So it's IP. It's true to the IP, and it has like such strong narrative hooks that if you're into that kind of game, it's like your jam because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, and I get to read a story while I'm playing. And so many families have written us and said this was perfect for playing with my kids, and we read the book together and all that kind of stuff. So as a teacher, that makes me very happy.
Oh, Ryan.
So yeah.
Ryan, you guys have played this.
Yeah, Jen and I played it. We decided to do like, a couple evenings on a weekend type of thing.
Yeah.
And Regan is just starting to discover Scooby Doo, and
Yay.
so we're hoping because he's becoming my little gaming little buddy lately, and
Little
so,
Padawan.
yes, I am that dad that he's already a grade level ahead in math because he plays Pokemon so much,
Right.
and so he's already got all the multiplication and additions and subtractions down. So
Yeah.
we're hoping to
Screw you,
explore that.
Piaget.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all about
This card looks smaller. Yeah.
It's all about Pokemon. You can teach
Well,
most
yeah.
of that elementary school math with Pokemon.
You literally could. And I bet you do a good job of it
Yeah.
because people would be interested in it, right?
Yeah. Now
Partly
he's
that.
getting into economics because he's like, why did you say this card? Why can't I play with this card? Well, son, that's $100 card. Why is it worth $100?
Real
Worth
economics.
$100.
Yeah. Yeah. That card will buy you this many cards. Ooh, let's take care of this one then.
Right.
Yeah.
Or let's just go get those cards instead because I want
Yeah.
more cards.
Yeah.
Dad.
Sell it. I want $100 in my piggy bank.
Okay.
I'm looking at your 2022 lineup, and instead of bouncing through all of them, how about you grab one and give us a little bit, of an experiential epiphany, if there were any in these design moments, because
So the Kingdom Rush that's coming out in 2022 is Elemental Uprising, and we're just finishing that right now. Level design is really difficult. In any game, really, level design is not an easy thing because you have to, again, you've done the mechanics, but now you have to apply the mechanics to a scenario or a setting, and it's got to feel good, and it's got to feel perhaps different than another scenario. Like you can't just repeat and rehash So every time you make a scenario, you're probably making new rules, Marvel Champions, right? As you know, from just playing Marvel Champions. So when you're talking about it, it's like, oh yeah, of course they're going to put a Thanos deck with that, and of course, each of the bosses is going to attack quite differently because humans by nature like novelty. It's not a bad thing. It's just that's what we like.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's coming out, and we're currently plugging our way through the last 6 or 7 scenarios, and then we'll ship it to developers. And we're doing that in partnership with Lucky Duck in Poland, and they're developing like a side by side stream. So that should get done sooner than later. Hopefully, we'll be done by December, end of December probably. I think is we're aiming for that. Rat Queens, and that's with
Erica.
Alara. Yeah, Rat Queens with Erica. Kingdom Rush is with Alara Wright and Helena Hope, and so that's one of the hosts from Maple Syrup, and then Rat Queens to the Slaughters with the other host of Maple Syrup, Erica. Buurus and myself did that one, and Alara is the developer on that. So that's actually a whole Maple Syrup team thing.
Cool.
Which is really cool. And Rat Queens is based on a great comic by fellow Canadian Curtis Wiebe, who has unfortunately left us for Sweden. He works for, is he at Ubisoft in Sweden? He does the writing for Gears of War.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Rat Queens was probably one of his most critically acclaimed comics. He also did like Peter Panzerfaust and some other ones. But yeah, so currently he's working in video games. And Rat Queens has been one of my favorite things since its inception. It's just like punk rock, women warriors and swearing and all sorts of stuff. It's great. Psychedelic and drugs and alcohol and wonderful stuff. A little subversive. And that was a kind of a reverse tower defense type thing, I guess. It was not reverse. It's kind of tower defensey, not as tower defensey as Kingdom Rush, but then using deck building and to develop your characters and boss battles and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool getting to play in those various worlds, Kingdom Rush being another IP from a video game and Rat Queens being from a comic book. And then the Goonies from a movie, right? So I luckily, I guess, get to play in lots and lots of sandboxes that different people own, which is fun, also difficult. Also, we get to make subtle changes to things. So the Goonies, Escape with One-Eyed Willie's Rich Stuff, is from, if you've watched the Goonies, it takes place from the time they go down through the grate.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're saying, well, what happened to Sloth and Chunk?
Yeah.
There's a whole other story there, my friend.
Oh.
Yeah. So
and that's part of the Coded Chronicle series. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll have books and characters and puzzles galore and some great art from our friend Andy Jewett. So it's a really cool game. I would hazard to guess so Scooby holds a very, very special place in my heart, but Goonies is a really good game too. The Shining one, unfortunately there were some production things that went on with that because it was right at COVID, right at the start of COVID. And so there's an error check in the game that didn't get printed. So it's a little bit wonky, which is unfortunate. So I'm not sure what's exactly going to happen with that game from now on, but
considering
it's not a bad fix. It's not a hard fix. It's just, it kind of made some people sad that it didn't work quite well. It's a puzzle game and you can't solve the puzzle. You get upset. Yeah. Right. So that's what happened there.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Let's see what else there is. Mind management. There you go.
Yes.
Which is, I'm really happy with the reception it's got. I'm so over the moon when people like just tweet about it or something and say, look at the production quality of this. I've had, my friends from Critical Role have played it and they're like, this is amazing. And like the art direction's fabulous and all this kind of stuff. It's like, thank you.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. There's a lot of work that went into that, making it what it is, the product that it is. So Jay and Matt put countless hours into coming up with the box and the container for the boxes and the
And the
container for the
coded
container of the boxes.
messaging and it's
Oh,
galore. Yeah.
Well, that's just Matt being Matt. Matt's like that. And then,
Yeah.
but we put stuff in there. Matt put stuff that we don't even know is in there. Like Jay and I don't even know it's in there. We see it and it's like, oh my gosh. But then there's some other stuff that we put in there. There's an actual website that you can go to and enter the codes. And
I was going to say, yeah.
Get stuff like downloadable content for the game that works in the game.
I've already nerded out and took the little kind of a little code
the red gel
thing, looking around and went, hey, there's a little, and so I check it out, and I've got a couple
the
openings.
Flux Safe House.
The app, which is training mode right now.
Yeah.
I've played it, and I can't wait till you guys open that up and run some scenarios through that.
We're hoping to get more of the rules in. So currently, it will most likely start with the like all the stuff that's in the shift system.
Yeah.
The shift system is a hilarious story. The shift system is a story of Evan Derrick, who is the designer behind Detectives, and Matt Leacock, who I don't know if you know him. He designed a little game called Pandemic.
Yeah.
He's pretty okay.
Popped up on the radar here.
So mind management and the shift system is a story of how Jay and Sen broke Matt and Evan's brains one day. Because here's the thing, designers, if you're listening, you will get caught in this trap that Jay and I got caught in of scope creep, of just adding stuff to your game because it's cool. And because you play with the same people, a lot of times, like we play with the same 4 or 8 people in our 2 playtest groups. And we thought, we have 2 playtest groups. We're probably immune to this. Nope. We just kept adding stuff because they had played the game so much that they got not bored, but they're like, remember I said before, humans like novelty?
Yeah, more toys.
They just wanted new things to play with, which is what the shift system is. And so we said, this is a cool thing to do. Let's add it. This is a cool thing to do. Let's add it. And our players could handle it because they've gone through each iteration of it. But then we played with Matt, arguably, one of the best designers of our time, and Evan, who, if you've ever played Detective, there are only 2 people in the world, maybe 3, who can actually write a detective scenario. That's how complex they are. So it's Evan, Alara, who I work with, Alara Wright, and I think Logan might be able to. Logan Giannini might have worked for them as well. But there's really only 2 or 3 people in the world who are able to come up with a scenario for that game because it's just so complex. And we broke their brains, is what I'm saying. We melted their brains, not because it's overly complex in each individual little piece, but because when you throw everything at them at once, they're like,
all these
what is going
lights
on here? Yeah, it's like too much stuff, right? And so they're like, I don't know if there's even a good game under here, but there's so much stuff that it's overwhelming. And like Matt was just like exhausted after he played the game. And so we're like, shit, we got to do something about this. What are we going to do? And so we came up with the shift system, which is a gradual introduction of all these things, but based on win-loss. Yeah. We wanted people to play the game a lot.
Well, and from an educator point of view, I looked at how this, because basically it's you have the mind management on one side, and then you have the resistance, or I forget what the term you use on the other side.
The rogue agents.
Yes, the rogues. And if the mind management loses, then they open up a box to get themselves so the scaffolding, I love it.
Which is very much like masks, right? If you lose, you get a bonus.
Yeah, you bump up until until it balances, and then the game is driven at an even head-to-head until one person goes out of balance, then you bring it back. Yeah. And I love the way that you've introduced that, and the little comics and the narratives.
Oh yeah, the comic, those are all brand new original comics that Matt drew just for this game. Nice. Which because each of them explains the actual shift. Yeah. It's fascinating. Matt is a ridiculous human to work with.
Yeah.
He is so fun to work with. He just makes stuff all the time. He's just constantly creating, and it's wonderful. And so I think other than that, the only thing, My Singing Monsters, this is a good one because that's a local company to me. Big Blue Bubble is a app video game company that made this app called My Singing Monsters. And if you know Mark Maya from Board Game Breakfast, do you know Mark?
Yeah,
he works for them. And the CEO or the COO, one of these C's, one of the chiefs there said, it was a big board gamer, said, we should have a board game. And Mark's like, I know somebody who's local who could do that for you. Right. Because we're like, versatile. Right? And so we got hooked up with them. We made them this board game. And this is the thing I love about this one is that it is made for families, but it's made modularly so that it grows with your players growing in skill. So the very first game is like, so in the app, you go to different islands and visit monsters on the different islands. And so the starting game is like one island. And then as you learn how to do the moves on that one island, you'll add another island and you'll just play the game with those two islands and then add a third island, add a fourth island, add a fifth island until you're playing with all 5 islands and you're playing the full game. But that doesn't mean that all the games before that are like, not fun.
Mhm.
They still are, but it just depends on how skilled your players are. So we wanted a game that would grow with the players, that there would be some modularity to it that was meaningful. I often will say modularity is a trap and post Admiral Akbar, because a lot of times modularity doesn't actually mean what people think it means. And the other thing about modularity is a lot of times is like you can't test every possible combination and permutation, and some of them are not good.
Yeah.
Right. Some of these combinations are just no good. So, tough luck if that's the one that you put together the first time you set up the game out of the box, like a modular map.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is really unbalanced. I'm not playing this again.
Or it's just straight broken. Yeah.
Yeah. So we made this one to kind of combat that, which is sort of our goal with every game. It's like, let's make a game that takes this thing and turns it on its head, or let's make a game that improves, I don't know, like roll and move or whatever. So that's what we do when we usually pick a new product or a new game project to work on. It's like, what can we do with this one? What is different than what we've done before? So yeah, that's my 2021 and into 2022. There's a couple other ones, those ones that are at the top of the list. So Adventure Tactics, I just made a scenario. In Goblin Vaults, Alara and I designed and developed a game for Keith from Thunderworks. But then Keith took it and redesigned it, so it's really now a Keith design with his friend Tom. And then Alara and I are more developers of it. So yeah, cool. It's probably gonna shift in terms of who did what. But yeah, other than that, Alara and I are working on a ton of other games as developers. So yeah, things are going great.
Well, that rounds out the episode perfectly because
well, there you go.
Yeah, I'm really excited for My Singing Monsters because we learned about that when Jay was on the show, and it was it was on Kickstarter at that time, and I backed it live on the show. So I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting. I'm going to wait for it because it sounds exactly what we like to do here at this house.
For sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, just before you head out, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you and what other kind of media content that you're producing that they can tie into?
Cool. So you can find me on Twitter at Senfong Lim. That's SENFOONGLIM. That's where I am, and I talk about stuff from games and social justice and apparently my underwear. I talked about my underwear today on Twitter.
I saw that one.
And, I had it on backwards. I was wondering, I was sitting like literally in this chair, talking on this mic, teaching a class and going, why does my underwear feel weird? And then I was done class and I reached into the back and said, oh, that's why. So I was like, something weird here. And there's a tag on the front and there's no tag on the back.
There's formatting issues with my underwear.
Yeah, it's just real weird. So there you go. Things that Sen did not know is that underwear are shaped differently depending on which way you wear them. I can probably canonically list every single like member of the Legion of Superheroes, but I do not know that underwear is shaped differently back to front and front to back.
So you heard it here. You cannot wear them inside out and backwards.
Do not try this at home.
You can. Yeah. You totally can. The question is will you be comfy? I'm the kind of person I can't wear 2 different socks. I know my body just knows 2 different socks. Can't wear them. I can't. I literally cannot wear them. It bothers me so much. Yeah, and so other things that I'm working on right now, if you're into RPGs, Jiangshi, Blood in the Banquet Hall, is fulfilling very shortly, which is pretty cool.
Can't
That is
wait.
a game that Banana Chan and I wrote together
I
about,
kickstarted it.
yeah, thank you, about Asian immigrants, Chinese immigrants specifically during the just post gold rush. So 1920s ish, Canada, United States, and what the fallout is of that when hopping vampires attack your restaurant, which, happens.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And then if you are interested in really out there kind of RPGs, we have one currently on Kickstarter called An Exquisite Corpse,
That's
Banana
right.
Chan and I, which is a drawing game. So it is a drawing RPG where you are basically co-creating with your fellow players the denizens of the surreal world in which you are solving crimes as psychic detectives.
Wow.
So if you ever remember from grade school when you folded a piece of paper into 3 parts, and then somebody drew the head and they folded it back, and then you drew the body and you folded it back and handed it to your friend who drew the legs.
Yeah.
That's what this game's mechanics are run on.
Nice.
That and like prompts, story prompts.
Yeah.
So there's no dice, it's diceless. There's no GM. It's just a drawing and storytelling game about crimes and the psychic detectives who solve them.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, so that's going on there. And then weekly, you can find me on the Maple Syrup Show with my co-hosts Erica Buyuris and Alara when she comes home from Northwest Territory. She is very far away right now, and then she'll be back in January, most likely. More like February when she finishes her contract, and then she'll be back, and then we'll be in the full swing of things with all 3 of us. And then you can find me also on Ludology as one of the co-hosts. I'm on there every now and then. We rotate on a really sporadic basis. So yeah, super fun.
Excellent. Well, that's awesome. And that brings us to that appreciative part of the episode where I always like to thank everybody for sticking around and listening to us all the way to the end. Thank you so much, and thank you, Sen.
No problem.
Thank you again.
And that being said, I'm your host, Norm.
And I'm Ryan.
And we'll catch you later. Yay, and we're out.
Really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So much stuff to talk about.
I could have went on. There was a point where my wife opened the door and I'm like looking over the computer at her and she's kind of like, can you
said we were going to watch Kim's Convenience tonight. Come on, Norm.
So I gave her this one 5 minutes, and I think that was like 20 minutes ago.
Oh, see, here I saw that. I thought you were telling Shen 5 minutes.
No, I was trying. Yeah, and the moment I did that, I'm like, oh no, I'm not trying to prompt anybody. I'm trying to talk over the camera.
You do really have to shut me up because I do talk a lot. I can lecture for like 6 hours in a day, so
you're
this is
talking
nothing.
to 2 teachers here who could just
I know.
Cool.
Exactly.
Ryan and I think are going to take a little intermission, and then we're going to come back and record our second episode of the evening. Sen, thank you so much.
No problem. All right, have a good night. We'll
Take
see you
care, man.
later.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
See you later.
Bye.